Hello, welcome. You are attending the session titled Ask a Seed Saver. And my name is Cindy Goodner. I'm the Development Director at Seed Savers Exchange, and I'll be your host for this session. Before we begin with introductions, I would like to take a moment and thank one of our sponsors, Chelsea Green Publishing. Since 1984, Chelsea Green has been the leading publisher of books about organic farming, gardening, homesteading, health, natural building, sustainable living, socially responsible business, and more. So for our next session, we're here with Seed Savers Exchange staff, including Brennan Allsworth, Christi Nickey, and Justin Skarin, excuse me. I'm going to give you a brief introduction for each of them, and then I'll welcome them to the stage. First, Brennan is an avid seed steward who enjoys countless aspects of farming, from starting plants in early spring to cultivating throughout the year. He also enjoys harvesting things from his garden, baking, and fermenting. Next, I'll introduce Christi. Christi is a fourth-generation family farmer from central Indiana. She has worked in food systems for more than 20 years as a professional chef and restaurateur, through running farmers markets, working with food rescues, and managing CSAs. And last but not least, Justin Skarin is a master gardener through Iowa State Extension and Outreach. Justin's background has primarily been in home gardening prior to joining the Seed Savers Exchange staff. His at-home experience has focused on native plant landscaping, kitchen preservation gardening, and community gardening with a focus on food pantry production. Okay, and here's our team.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. So the format of this session is to ask your gardening questions. So Justin and Brennan and Christi are all leaders on our farm and field ops team. They are, out in our gardens day after day and are very knowledgeable. So the format of this session is for you to ask your gardening questions, and then the team will take turns answering. So just type your questions in the chat, and we will get to those. Okay, and I'm going to begin. Okay, so our first question is from Vanessa. Vanessa asks, any suggestions for doing seeds on a backyard gardener scale? Lettuce, asters, milkweed. So many fluffy, little messy seeds.
You want to take that one, Justin? I think you deal with that kind of stuff a lot.
Was that a question speaking towards the processing of those seeds? Well, I guess like the fluffy ones, I guess. So that I think we break down to winnowing most often. And on a home scale, you're going to want to do that basically with a box fan. And that's about the most complex tool you'll have in your disposal. I guess you would first take all your seed and kind of grind it up, and the actual seed is going to be withstanding all the pressure you're going to put into it. And so sometimes you can do this in a Rubbermaid with your feet, wearing shoes even. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to break the seed away from all of its chaff before you then winnow it with your box fan. At which point then you're going to set your box fan up in front of a space with a few trays. And little by little, you'll judge how your seed reacts when you do so, depending on the variety. But you'll slightly, little by little, dump it in front of your box fan, and it will blow the material across the different trays you have laying out. Then, so logically, the heavy seed that's good and what you want to save is going to be the first ones to fall down from the fan's pressure, whereas the chaff, the lighter materials that you broke away, will blow even further away into the other trays, or just even to I'd like to do this in the garage because it's more of like a controlled space. You don't get as much other wind and other things in the way that would ruin the process. And I guess another tip for that is you can often get a much tighter channel of air if you build a cardboard box funnel on the backside of your box fan. And so if your box fan is upright, blowing this direction, you can build sort of a tube out of cardboard on the backside that sucks air in tighter and gives you a straighter shoot for your winnowing process. I guess I know Brennan's had a lot of experience with this too on a lot of different types of seeds. So if I guess either you or Christy want to jump in with any additional details.
Yeah, what we used to do is put two box fans next to each other if you ever need a stronger blow for future reference. But usually we just put it on a folding chair with like a few Rubbermaid totes right below it. Then you hover over your fan, like he said, with the your crate of seed, fluffy and everything. And it's a remarkable way in which to clean seed. But specifically to the de-awning process, which would come before that, I guess, a lot of it just comes down to, like, depending on the seed. Most seed can just withstand being like stomped by your feet in a bucket. So especially like coming for lettuce and aster, you could probably do stuff like that. But milkweed, I think, is a crop that I used to try to harvest it before it really started to balloon up. So you can do is go check the milkweed pods and make sure that the seed has started to form, but not early enough that it's like peeling out and starting to spread those little seeds into the air. And if you catch it at the right time, as in while the seeds are mature, but the seeds have not started to bust out of the pod already, you can just like scoop them out with your hand and not even deal with most of that fluff. So if I were you, I would just aim towards more observation when you can, because the less work that you have to do, the better, man.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Sean. Can you suggest any seed collection software? I'm using spreadsheets, binders, and directories of pictures. I'd like something more unified that can handle variety details, images, and can print out seed labels from the variety info and photos.
Wow.
Wow, that's a really good question. I would love that software as well. I'm not sure if something exactly like that exists. One of the things that I have used before that has many of those same capacities is a farm software that's called Tend. There is a free version of that, but then there's also a paid version, and it definitely can handle a lot of variety information, and there's a lot of things already loaded into it, and it makes the farm planning side of things really easy. I'm not 100% sure whether it has the capacity to print seed labels, but you definitely can use pictures within it. And hey, let us know if you find a perfect software that fits this niche market thing that we're doing, because I don't know of one that's going to meet all of the capacity that you're looking for. What about you guys? No?
I have something. Do you have anything, Justin?
Only thing I know is, the whole team we have at Seed Savers getting our labels and everything ready, as well as field crew getting the seeds. So, yeah, Brennan, take it away.
Yeah, that's the finance. I enjoy using spreadsheets when I need to, but I am very organized, so I appreciate your determination to try to find this out. But the best route that I would veer you towards is there's a cooperative farm called Turn to Soul out of Quebec. And not only are they inspiring because they're a worker-owned cooperative farm that does seed production and CSAs, but Dan Brisebois, who is one of the co-owners, runs what's called the Farmer Spreadsheet Academy. And he gets really into the weeds about spreadsheets and using the different little sheet shortcuts that you can use. And a lot of it is aimed towards like CSA vegetable production. But again, they do run their own seed company, basically. I think there would be a lot of overlap between at least just looking at how they're organizing their spreadsheets And yeah, that might be the best for you there. I can type that in.
Thank you. Okay, next is from Catherine. How long can you save seeds before they won't germinate?
That really depends on what kind of seed it is. We've definitely, found bean seeds in a cave in a pod in South America and had success in germinating and growing out beans and corns and other things like that from very, very ancient seed. So it definitely does depend on what crop type you're dealing with and how you're storing them. Ideally in a cold, cool environment and dry, they should last for at least a few years for almost any type of seed. What were you going to say, Justin?
Well, just basically that much. At Seed Savers, we have a very large walk-in cooler in which we keep our seeds in essentially 5-gallon plastic buckets, which makes it easier for the organization and storage and packing process. But some of those varieties, we will test them for germination annually, and some of those varieties have stayed, in the 90 percentile range of germination rates for nearly a decade. And sometimes we get a seed in and we'll check it, and it will maybe, be a lot that we have to deaccession because it goes below that rate. But we're always keeping on that every year, and it depends as much between varieties as it does between the seed lot itself and who grew it and the conditions it was grown in. So I think best practices are just the only way we can make our seeds last as long as we possibly can. Like Christy said, cool, climate-controlled environment.
Yeah. There's like graphs out there that you can find that show like average life of said crops. Like alliums are going to be on the low end, whereas corn and grains are going to be on the higher end, and a lot of things just kind of in between there. But yeah, I'd say put them somewhere dark and cool, and ideally we'd all be growing out our seeds every year so that they get better and better adapted to our changing world. But some of us have to put them in buckets, so we all have to, do what you do, but keep growing them.
Dark, cool, and dry, right, Brennan?
Yeah.
Cool and dry. All right. Next question is from Vanessa. Do you have references for sieve sizes for various seed types, or specific handbooks, best practices for seed cleaning? I've saved and cleaned about 160 varieties, wow, Vanessa, of seeds last year, and I'm starting to make my own notes about methods for various types. But someone has already done this work. USDA has charts for grains, but I haven't found much for vegetables and flowers.
Yeah, so our own book called The Seed Saver, isn't it?
The Seed Garden?
The Seed Garden. There's a pretty good chart in that book. One of my favorite, though, that I've used over the years is from a company called the Winnow Wizard, which, if you're unfamiliar, is an incredible seed cleaning tool that's built pretty much like one by one in Western Oregon, redefining the use of, it's like redefining seed cleaning equipment, because no longer is it super big and expensive. It's like under $5,000. Regardless of the machine, the author has spent countless hours detailing a lot of his findings, not only using screens and sieves, but also with the machine. And it's open source, free. You can just go on their website, and it's in the manual to the Winnow Wizard. So even if you have no intention of using the Winnow Wizard, you can just open that free PDF and look at the sheets that he's already produced. As well as just starting to look up, oh boy. Yeah, if you look up like seed screen companies, if you look into their websites, sometimes you could find free information about what they recommend. So I'll type in the Winnow Wizard website right now, but the rest of it, yeah, it's out there. Don't waste too much time. even though it's smart what you're doing. But yeah, someone definitely has spent way too much time on this already. So.
Okay, from Jessica. What do you think the best starter veggies are in terms of seed saving for beginners?
That's a tricky one. As I start thinking about all the crops that I have in my garden, each one has such a unique system in order to actually get to a well pollinated or true to type seed. Brennan, do you have a suggestion?
Beans.
Yeah, beans and peas are definitely very straightforward.
Corn, if you got it.
The seeds fall right out nice and clean, easy to dry and safe for sure.
Yeah. Grains. Radish. It produces a pod that has to dry down, but it's pretty easy compared to many other things. Yeah, don't go barking up Justin's tree. I feel like he's got things that need to be like frozen for a few weeks and like or who knows what. Just kidding.
Well, I'm trying to do pumpkins true to type in my own yard this year, and I got to worry about my neighbor's pumpkin patch. So
yep,
that's a different process altogether.
Brennan, the first crop type that you mentioned was beans. Can you talk us through the process of when is best to harvest beans if you're growing for seed saving?
Yeah, I think Christi already joked about it in her rant, but yeah, they're super easy. They're basically drying down on the vine, and if you want to be particularly safe, you can harvest them just before they're actually like shaking. Like you could pick it up and shake it, and it's hard. We do a lot of that because there's like the chance that good rain will come through and knock down your crop. Yeah, I would say waiting until the bean pod and potentially the plant itself is yellow and dry. And I made the comment about saving it for you could do it a bit early because at least in the Midwest here, we can have a pretty crazy storm. This year's a drought, but like what folks do when they harvest big grain is they go out there and they test the little grains, and you could squeeze them or eat them, and there's different stages. And the more that you know about the process of each specific crop, you'll know that you can harvest them early. Like the traditional fields of grain that were harvested by people before combines, that's why they made the shocks, or what's called the stooks. So it's like the piles of grain piled onto each other, because in order to harvest so much at once, you had to make sure it was somewhat pliable. So they would harvest all of it right before it dried down, put it all together, then it would dry down on the vine. So, but if you're just in your backyard, you don't need to worry about it.
Sitting here thinking, I did consider a unique one a lot of folks don't think about that I've had a lot of fun with in my own yard, and that's garlic. Saving the bulbs. We're currently in the process of harvesting our garlic at Seed Savers Exchange, and I'm drying mine own at home. And that's a really fun one because, I mean, you just save the exact same bulbs from the plant you've stuck in the ground last year too. So it's a really fun circular process to really get under your feet as a new gardener.
Okay.
Okay, from Sean. In a previous session, it was mentioned that seeds at Svalbard are stored in custom 4-ply foil packets, and that Seed Savers Exchange uses the same ones. Are those available to the public? I found similar products online, but found that sharp seeds like corn can produce many dents in the foil that could lead to leaks over time as the packets rub up against each other over the years. Do any of you know of a source to
I think,
and it's okay if we don't know, but
not off the top of my head.
I think that'd be a question for our customer service department. They'll be located locally to the folks who order those for us in the seed house. And
yeah, right.
I know we sell a lot of our materials that we use in the seed house, for example, in the visitor center, but that's definitely one that we don't have out there.
Yeah, we don't sell that at this time. But Sean, that's a great idea and one that we'll certainly carry forward. Okay, from Vanessa. Winnowing tends to let the seeds fly. The de-awning is rubbing the seeds first to break away from the awns or the pappus. And this is kind of a follow-up from the question that she asked before. I built a vacuum seed cleaner. So that part is handled. Okay, any additional comments on winnowing from Vanessa? Okay.
I haven't had as much practice with a lot of dry processing at Seed Savers Exchange. I've done a lot more of the wet stuff, but I do know one of the things that we have at our disposal is a dryer. And we will tumble a lot of things that need to break away from really hard chaff as long as the seed can take it. And so if I recall correctly, our process was to put them into a bag that can hold the seed without it being knocked out. And so that's often just like a cloth bag. But then we'll throw in items like large Legos and other blocks that will just, as the barrel rolls, kind of knock things apart. It's just something a little unorthodox, but to my knowledge, it worked pretty well.
Great. Next from Sean, can you talk a little bit about Heritage Farms potato collection, a number of varieties versus those that the USDA has? Does Seed Savers Exchange grow them in the ground or pots or in tissue culture?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. We currently this year are growing about 30 different varieties of potatoes, and most of those we grew out from tissue culture this spring. We took them out from tissue culture. We kept them in the greenhouse in pots for about a month, kind of let them bounce back from that process, put on some leaves, start making some tiny potato roots, and then planted them out into the ground. So they are growing now in mounds and kind of a deep trench, and they're putting on a lot of potatoes and growing really big. They're flowering and they look really great. And I understand that last year we did this as well, and we did replant those seed potatoes that we gathered last year. We replanted those as well this year and are growing them out. So we'll hope for a larger potato crop this year and then start that whole cycle all over again.
From Michelle, as a small home gardener, how do you address cross-pollination when saving seeds?
I can start it off. Some ideas is talking with your neighbors, figuring out what they are growing. That's a process that we at least used to do at Seed Savers, not currently, but it's a smart thing to do. I used to run a small seed farm right next to other neighbor farms, and I basically just bribe them to grow certain crops, like certain Cucurbita maxima pumpkins. Also, there's a lot of crops that you can get away with that you probably don't have to worry about, like checking the distance, like your beans. I don't know how close you are to your neighbor garden or your neighbor, but there's a lot of little crops. I'd say definitely beans and peas. Like I said, a lot of those grains, probably a lot of flowers. Then you can also get into hand pollination. If there's specific cucumbers or cucurbita, squash that you want, even down to like you can cage things. You could put tomatoes and peppers in cages. You have to make sure that you're putting little critters in there to pollinate for you. So there's a lot of little tricky ways in order to do this. Justin and Christy, any thoughts?
Well, I would also recommend bloom bags. I use these for collecting seed a lot on the other end of the process, but one thing you can do is when you notice a fluorescence coming on a plant you want to save seed from, and you want to maybe hand pollinate it, but you don't want pollinators to get to it first, you can tie a simple little mesh bag over the flower, allow it to open until you have time to come in and then pollinate it with, a guaranteed flower of your choice. And then you can cover it back up and keep pollinators away from it. Maybe tie a little string off to that branch so you can check on it later, and you'll know that that seed is going to be good and true to type for your collection. And I don't know, another recommendation I would have is sometimes, we have wild plants out there to concern ourselves with. Like, for example, I like to think of our carrots. They'll cross-pollinate with your Queen Anne's lace in the field. But if you're saving carrot biennially for seed, oftentimes you're getting it out there much sooner. And so when it does go to flower, it's going to flower well before any wild varieties that could cross-pollinate, which is another timing. Is another great thing. Anything else, Christi?
No, I'm glad that you hit on that, though, because I do think timing can be really helpful in a lot of situations by choosing when you're planting things as opposed to when the native variety might be blooming and things like that. That can be really helpful.
Is there an optimal time to harvest peas and beans to reduce the number of bean weevils while still maintaining good maturity for high germination?
Oh, I don't know where you're located, Sean, but I have not ever had a problem with bean weevils. Have you guys? So sorry, I can't speak to that.
Good question.
Okay. Okay. Next from Marcia, I did not get all of my fingerling potatoes planted and the pail with potatoes got wet. Oh no. Would putting them on a screen to dry help so I can plant next year?
I'd say
go ahead, Mr. Idaho.
I was going to say they're potentially pushing it. That thing's going to dry out. I mean, maybe if you put it somewhere really cool and dark, you could put it in a like a pot in a medium, maybe in a soil or like a sand that you keep somewhat moist. But my experience with potatoes is that after they haven't been put in the ground after that first year, they're going to dry up pretty good. And the eyes would probably just get so lanky. I'd say eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Justin?
My only recommendation I was going to add to that was I've had a lot of experience with keeping tubers alive for way too long in my basement. Just ornamental plants, but it's kind of a similar process. And actually finding vermiculite this year was a really nice addition to my toolkit. It does a really good job of sort of balancing moisture with plant material it's adjacent to. Like, it will take moisture away if there's too much, but it will reserve it and be there for the plant if the plant is drying out too much. And so, I don't know, that's just a fun little thing I learned this year. So,
what gauge wire or mesh or hardware cloth do you use on your cages?
So are you talking about like if you're referring to the isolation cages in which we attempt to prevent cross-pollination, that's not more of like a netting, like an insect netting, so a bit more durable. I feel like that's what you're probably referring to. Yeah, it's I wouldn't know where one would find it. I'm sure it wouldn't be. I know you can buy it on a small scale, but yeah, it's like an insect netting.
Okay. Our time is up, but I do have one last question for you all. Is there a pro tip that you would like to share that has not yet been asked?
I don't think of it as a pro tip, but I do have one thing. Be willing, to try things and to try new things and keep an open mind. We all know that the climate is shifting and things are changing, and maybe we're seeing varieties that do really well in our particular environment. And be open to listening to your plants. If you're just trying really hard to grow brandywine tomatoes and they don't work in your environment, try something else that may thrive better where you are, and listen to the plants and accept that feedback from them. If you're just banging your head against a wall trying to grow this one specific variety of thing, it might not be the most suited for your area. And, be willing to adapt and try new things, because that's such an important part of this process.
Yeah, I'd say be patient. It's a long process too. It's one that's been going, for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years, getting passed on hand to hand. It takes a lot to learn it too. I know that too well myself. And every plant is different within every single variety. So, give yourself patience. Don't internalize failure, but learn from it and plug on till next year. We'll have more seed for you if it doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, start small. Let the obsession build. I feel like you might just start with one or two things. All of a sudden, you're growing 30 to 40 different seed crops. You might start networking with people in your region. You might become a real seed freak, which is not hard to do. But I'd say don't push it too hard.
Okay. Well, bravo to our team of farmers at Seed Savers Exchange. Thank you for all you do. And audience, thank you for tuning in this afternoon. We'll see you next time.